Hello, welcome to the news on NTA International. I am Dennis Adegunloye. Thanks for joining us. Let's begin with the headlines. Tensions in Middle East as United States and Israel launch coordinated strikes in Iran. Federal government advises Nigerians in Iran and the Gulf countries to stay vigilant and limit movements. And President Tinubu commends Labara's launch in Nigeria, describing the feat as a strong vote of confidence in Nigeria's digital economy. Now, tensions in the Middle East have escalated sharply as the United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes on Iranian targets, triggering explosions across Tehran and pushing the region to the brink of a broader conflict. Let's get details with Justin Bemui.
Multiple explosions tore through parts of Tehran Saturday after the United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes on Iranian military targets, sending thick columns of smoke into the capital's skyline.
The United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation.
In a video address posted from Florida, U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed that American forces had begun what he described as major combat operations against Iran. He said the objective was to eliminate imminent threats and dismantle Iran's missile and naval capabilities. Trump vowed that Iran's missile industry would be obliterated, warning of overwhelming force while urging the Iranian people to take control of their future.
Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the joint operation was launched to remove what he called an existential threat posed by Iran. He described the strikes as a necessary step to safeguard Israel's security and create conditions for long-term stability. Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz declared a nationwide state of emergency, labeling the action a preemptive strike. Sirens sounded across Jerusalem and other major cities as authorities issued urgent mobile alerts warning of an extremely serious security threat. Iran responded swiftly. Air raid sirens echoed across Israel amid reports of Iranian ballistic missile attacks targeted Israeli territory. Defensive systems were activated as explosions were heard in several areas. In Tehran, Iranian state media confirmed multiple missile impacts in districts of the capital and reported that President Masoud Pezeshkian was safe. Emergency services were dispatched, though there was no immediate confirmation of casualties. The confrontation is now expanding beyond direct exchanges between the two nations. Two senior officials from the Iranian-backed Houthi movement in Yemen say the group has decided to resume missile and drone attacks on shipping routes and on Israel in support of Tehran. The officials, speaking on condition of anonymity, indicated that a formal announcement from Houthi leadership is pending. Such a move could threaten key maritime corridors and further destabilize regional trade and security. Airspace closures were quickly enforced across Iran, Israel, and parts of neighboring countries, while U.S. diplomatic missions in the Gulf advised citizens to seek shelter. What began as a targeted military strike has rapidly evolved into a multi-front escalation, raising urgent concerns among global powers about the risk of a wider Middle East war. The world now watches closely as events continue to unfold. Justin Bemuni, NTA News.
Meanwhile, nations worldwide have expressed grave concern over a potential full-scale Middle East war following joint United States and Israeli military strikes on Iran on Saturday. The attacks prompted swift Iranian retaliation, including missile barrages targeting U.S. military bases across the region. Musa Baba Aliu has details.
February 28, 2026 will be boldly written in global history as the date of the joint Israel-US military strike against Iran. The war has since escalated beyond Iran's border, spreading to its neighbors. As explosions continued to reverberate across multiple countries and air defenses intercepted incoming threats, the international community watched anxiously for signs of further escalation in what many fear would become a prolonged and devastating regional configuration. United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, strongly condemned both the US-Israel strikes and Iran's counterattacks. He warned that continued escalation would bring only death, destruction, and human misery.
Bombs and missiles are not the way to resolve differences, but only result in death, destruction, and human misery.
Russia sharply criticized the US and Israeli action, stating that they were pushing the region towards a humanitarian, economic, and this cannot be ruled out radiological catastrophe. European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen emphasized the critical need to protect nuclear safety, particularly after indications that Iran's atomic facility were among potential targets. The British government expressed deep concern that the crisis would spread into a broader regional war.
It is vital that we prevent further escalation and return to a diplomatic process. We want to see peace and security and the protection of civilian life.
French President Emmanuel Macron warned that the conflict posed grave consequences for international peace and security. He called for an urgent United Nations Security Council meeting to address the dangerous escalation and insisted it must stop. The African Union appealed for restraints, urged de-escalation and dialogue, warning that prolonged conflict could adversely affect stability and populations on the African continent. Musa Baba Aliyu, NTA News.
Well, following the deteriorating security situation in the Middle East, the federal government advises Nigerians in Iran and Gulf countries to stay vigilant and limit their movements due to escalating tensions following the military action in the region. The federal government recommends avoiding strategic areas, following local directives and staying informed through official channels. The statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs further advises Nigerians to contact Nigerian embassies for assistance, noting that the government prioritizes citizens' safety and urges warring parties to de-escalate the crisis by returning to the negotiation table in the interests of global peace and coexistence. Now to some other news. French President Emmanuel Macron has accused the European Commission of acting unilaterally by provisionally implementing the Mercosur trade deal, calling the decision a bad surprise and a heavy institutional responsibility. In another development, South Africa has begun a nationwide cattle vaccination campaign to combat a fast-spreading foot and mouth disease outbreak, threatening livestock, food supplies, export markets, and thousands of agricultural livelihoods. Adaobi Obiechina brings us details.
Macron denounced what he described as the Commission's bad manners after it moved forward before an European Parliament vote. He argued the executive body assumed a heavy responsibility by bypassing parliamentary approval while awaiting a court ruling. Speaking alongside Slovenia's Prime Minister, Robert Golob, Macron pledged a strict enforcement on trade standards. He warned against agreements that ease import rules while imposing tougher regulations on European producers, saying such imbalance would undermine sovereignty and consumers' confidence. The European Commission, led by Ursula von der Leyen, maintains the agreement will proceed provisionally pending legal clarification. France, however, insists negotiated safeguards must be respected, signaling potential political frictions within the bloc. Meanwhile, in South Africa, the rampaging cattle disease has affected nearly 300,000 cattle, with more than 120 caught to limit transmission. Countries including China and Zambia have suspended imports, rising fears of meat shortage, job losses, and severe revenue declines across farming communities. Agriculture Minister Johnston Hussein announced the arrival of 1 million vaccine doses from Turkey, though experts warn far more are needed to protect nearly 12 million cattle. KwaZulu-Natal, the worst-hit province, has been declared a national disaster zone. Industry leaders, including veterinarians at Kerian Beef, described the epidemic as uncontrolled and devastating supply chains. Authorities aim to stabilize infections through mass immunization, hoping to restore trade confidence and protect the country's livestock sector. Adobe Obiechina, NTA News.
Guinea has released 16 Sierra Leonean soldiers arrested near their shared border, easing tensions between the West African neighbors following a dispute over alleged unauthorized entry into contested territory. Meanwhile, campaigning has begun in Congo-Brazzaville's presidential election, with long-serving leader Denis Sassou Nguesso seeking another term amid opposition fragmentation, disputed past results and concerns over civil liberties. Here again is Adaobi Obiechina with details.
Sierra Leone said that soldiers were constructing a border post in Kaliyeren when Guinean forces detained them. Guinea claimed dozens of armed troops crossed into its territory without permission, prompting their apprehension in the long-disputed frontier zone. Guinea's Prime Minister, Amadou Koriban, pledged a swift diplomatic resolution. The two nations share a 700-kilometer border marked by overlapping claims dating back to Sierra Leone's civil war, when Guinean troops intervened against rebel forces. Both countries, members of ECOWAS and the Mano River Union, have historically cooperated despite periodic tensions. The latest handover signals efforts to prevent escalation and maintain regional stability through dialogue rather than confrontation. In underdevelopment, the 82-year-old Denis Sassou Nguesso first ruled from 1979 to 1992 before returning to power in 1997 after civil war. Since then, he has won every election, including controversial coups in 2002, 2009, 2016, and 2021, following constitutional changes removing age limits. 6 opposition candidates, including newcomer Destin Gavin, are contesting the March 15 vote. However, critics argue the opposition remains divided and constrained. 2 prominent 2016 challengers remain imprisoned, while rights groups cite ongoing restriction on freedom and political dissent. Despite criticism, Sassou Nguesso is credited by supporters with restoring stability after the 1990s conflict. As campaign unfolds in Pointe-Noire, many observers expect the veteran leader to extend his decade-long rule once again. Adobe Obiechina.
The new Secretary General of the D8, that is the D8 Developing 8 Organization for Economic Cooperation, Ambassador Sohail Mahmoud, has just concluded his first official visit to Turkey. Ambassador Mahmoud held high-level talks while on a 3-day working visit to Ankara, the capital, aimed at revitalizing the D8 regional bloc and boosting its global standing. Garba Natal has details.
It was a mission to solidify support for Turkey, which is not only a founding member but also the host nation for the D8 Secretariat in Istanbul. During the visit, Ambassador Sohail Mahmoud was at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where he held constructive dialogue with senior deputy ministers. With Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, the Secretary General briefed the minister on his vision for the organization, focusing on institutional reform and preparing for the 12th D8 Summit, which is set to take place in Jakarta. Foreign Minister Fidan reaffirmed Turkey's support for the organization's transformation agenda, highlighting its critical role and progress. The Secretary General also met with the Minister of Trade, Professor Dr. Omar Bolad, where the focus centered on a major challenge, that is, boosting intra-D8 trade. A key issue was the new permanent secretariat for the D8 Chambers of Commerce and Industry, now based in Istanbul, which is seen as a vital tool for increasing private sector cooperation. Climate change was also on top of the agenda, with Environment Minister Murat Kurum. The two discussed potential joint initiatives in green transformation and sustainable urban planning, leveraging Turkey's upcoming presidency of the COP31 climate conference. Ambassador Mahmoud praised Turkey's initiatives, while at TRT, discussions were held on using digital and traditional media to amplify the D8's message and foster greater cultural connectivity. The Secretary General's message was also extended to Turkey's Vice President on the D8 expansion and also attended iftar hosted by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The visit reinforced the D8's shared vision for a more dynamic and globally engaged D8.
This is the news on NTA International. Let's take a break and more reports shortly. Stay with us. Welcome back. President Bola Tinubu has welcomed the official launch of Lebara Nigeria, describing it as a strong vote of confidence in the country's digital economy and its future as leading technology and investment destination in Africa. In a statement by the Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Nanuga, the President congratulates Lebara Nigeria on its official launch, saying this milestone reflects confidence in Nigeria's digital economy and underscores the nation's potential to lead in technology and investments across Africa. The President commends the leadership and partners of Lebara Nigeria, including Teniola Stuffman, the Chief Executive, for their commitment to expanding telecommunications access, creating employment opportunities and strengthening the nation's digital infrastructure. He acknowledges that investments of this nature are critical to deepening financial inclusion, enabling innovation, and accelerating economic growth. Nigeria's telecommunications sector is a significant economic driver with a 5.78% year-on-year growth in Q3 of 2025 and an overall contribution of over 14% to the nation's GDP. And President Bola Tinubu has reappointed Dr. Ahmed Abubakar Audi as the Commandant General of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC, for a new 5-year term, which took effect from Friday, February 27th. Dr. Audi was first appointed to the position in 2021 by former President Muhammadu Buhari. His initial 5-year term ended last Friday, and as he participated in activities commemorating the 2026 World Civil Defense Day at the NSCDC National Headquarters in Abuja. President Tinubu charged Audi to reposition the service to play a more significant role in the country's security. A statement by the Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, said he will resume his duties on Monday with a renewed mandate. Now, the Senate Committee on Information and National Orientation says there is an urgent need for improved budgetary allocations to the information sector to enable agencies to discharge their functions of information dissemination to achieve value reorientation, as well as a harmonious and united Nigeria. While submitting the budget defense reports on the sector before the Appropriations Committee for consideration, the Chairman, Senate Committee on Information, Kenneth Izzi, noted that the 88.9 billion naira 2026 allocation to the ministry and its 9 agencies is inadequate and appealed for more.
You will agree with me that this is just more like one-line budgetary provision for some project in some ministry, and a whole ministry and this agency is having this. amount. Last year, we drew the attention of this humble and honorable appropriation to the meager sum of money that was allocated to a whole information sector. So this year, I further appeal to this very reverend committee to further look into it. Information is a very sensitive sector, well funded. They will give this country what they need, especially in the area of orientation. We are having this restiveness and insecurity because people are brainwashed. That goes a long way to tell the power of information. If you capture the youth's mind positively, they behave positively. But if you allow them to fall into the hands of the enemies, they will brainwash them and could be used to the extent somebody can surrender his life for suicide bombing. That's the extent of power of information. And I would want to tell you, if we are to do things right, Mr. Chairman, and collect the component aspect of information in all the ministry, almost every ministry has an appropriation for information. If you can warehouse all these components from various ministry and domicile it to information, we should be getting the proper need of what we want.
There's so much of interference, yes, with their operations, okay? I want to believe that some of the coverages, okay, by NTA, payments are not being made. They are not paid. They should be able to pay. Okay, let NTA operate as a purely commercial venture.
Agencies under his committee play a very vital role in value orientation, instilling discipline and patriotism to citizens, and they are equally custodian of government policies and programs.
Also making a submission before the Appropriations Committee, the Chairman, Senate Committee on Firma, Sahabi Yao, solicited for more funding to the Agency for Rehabilitation of Road Networks.
In expanding the quality of infrastructure, it is expedient for the federal government to appropriate more funds to ensure thorough assessment of road conditions, which guides maintenance decisions to avert accidents and loss of life and properties.
Now, it is often said that when you empower a woman, you empower a nation. Yet, for women with disabilities, this potential has long been sidelined by deep-rooted systemic barriers. Vivian Hizadife reports that a non-governmental organization is leading the charge for a new era of inclusion in Nigeria's workforce.
Inclusion of people with disability in the society is gathering serious momentum, with advocacy for the needs to give them a sense of belonging. A non-governmental organization, Empower to Thrive Development Initiative, is playing a catalytic role in advancing disability inclusive economic empowerment in Nigeria by combining capacity building, policy advocacy, and strategic partnerships. The coordinator of the group, Dr. Shola Adeoye, says the initiative aims to ensure that women with disabilities are equipped, supported, and positioned to actively participate in and benefit from Nigeria's economic growth and development agenda.
The fact that women with disabilities have economic, they have economic challenges, and they can be empowered to be people that are economically sound and able to influence positively their families and their communities at large.
They lack access to education, they lack access to training, they lack access to financial inclusion.
The program is engaging disability women having economic potentials and as well committed and connected with mentors who have thriving businesses in order to make a better decision.
The training have built our capacity to make us to know our lefts and our rights in doing business.
The project is expected to impart and increase access to finance and business opportunities for women with disabilities, improve employability and entrepreneurial capacity, stronger policy and institutional frameworks for disability inclusive economic empowerment. Vivian Ezadifi, NTA.
Let's now get a check on the weather.